You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop.
Alright, kicking things off with a personal favorite. It's messy, it's weird, and it sets the tone real fast. Story 1. Don't blink.
None of us talked about it or admitted it out loud, not even Monica, but we were all a little afraid to be out there for too long. We had no concrete reason to be, but we were. No matter how many times the Pines family assured us that the property was safe. I'd never seen or heard anything out of the ordinary out there. Maybe it was just because I'd seen enough horror movies to develop a fear of the woods in general, but I don't know. Something about the air in the intimidatingly vast property just made me feel really vulnerable. I got told just days before we were supposed to leave that I wouldn't be able to take the time off for the trip. One of my fellow supervisors at work had to go in for emergency surgery on his knee and my store just didn't have the coverage. I was really bummed, but my friends didn't hold it against me. We all know being an adult sucks sometimes. I told them they could still use my cooler and my tents and my camcorder and that they should video blog the trip for me. I hugged them all goodbye the morning they left, and then I went off to my shift. I told Sal to call me once they got there because I knew he would be the only one who'd remember to check in. Sal never called. None of them did. I left work at 10 p.m. and tried to text and call all of them, but not one of them got back to me. I checked Twitter, Facebook, nothing from anybody. No update since Gabe's hitting the road status from earlier that morning. I felt like throwing up. Something felt really wrong. Key's mother called me as soon as I started to panic, and she sounded really rattled too. He hadn't talked to her all day, and he's really good about touching base with her when he takes trips. I'd later learn that whole night, my friends' parents were all trying to get in touch with each other. None of them heard from their kids since they first got on the road. Monica's mom called the landline to the house several times. Grandma Pines was out of town this year, but Monica should have answered if they were there. She didn't. Sean's father drove up to Pines' property the next morning with Monica's parents. He told me something felt off as soon as he stepped out of his car. When you pull up to the house, there's no fence or anything, so you can see if anything is set up in the area surrounding it. He would have been able to see if everyone had set up tents and gear as soon as he got up the path, but there was nothing. But he said all the house's windows were open and all the lights were on. Within a half hour, they called the police. I was asked to come in, watch the videos, and answer any questions I could. I transcribed what I watched as best I could. Clip 1, 10:45 September 16, 2016. Gabe has the camera pointed at the rearview mirror. Gabe, how the fuck do you know when it's recording? Gabe is filming the back of Lynn's car just ahead of them. He's talking to Sean and Monica, but I can't tell what they're saying, even with the audio adjusted. It's raining really hard and I see flashes of lightning. Clip 3, 8:16 September 16, 2016. A close-up of Monica. She's smoking and swinging in the rocking chair out on the back porch. She looks tipsy. She notices she's being filmed and winks at the camera. I think Sean laughs. Clip 4, 10:16 September 17, 2016. I swallow hard when I see the timestamp. It doesn't make any sense. Saturday morning. Sean's father was already calling the police by then. I want to ask the cop what's going on, but he tells me to please just keep watching quietly. Lily is flipping pancakes. She scrunches up her nose at the camera and Gabe chuckles. Lily, how could I? All those fucking screams last night. Gabe, the hell? Gabe, what the fuck? We didn't hear anything. Gabe, did the girls say anything? Clip 5, 11:14 September 17, 2016. A wide shot of the backyard. I can hear glasses clinking and a couple of my friends taking drags of cigarettes. I see a figure standing far off by the edge of the woods, but whoever's filming doesn't seem to notice it. Then I hear Gabe's voice, followed by Sean's, then Keys they talking about the hot tub needing repairs because the bubble jets don't work, and then the figure moves and Gabe sees it. Sean, dude. Gabe, holy fuck, what the fuck, who the fuck is? Key, Gabe. Sean, yo, what the fuck, man? Clip 6. It's night time, a shaky shot of the deck out back. The porch light is on and Lily and Key have their backs to the camera. They're crouched down sitting on the steps and Lily is sobbing. Key looks behind his shoulder and mouths, turn it off, but the camera's still recording. Key pecks the top of her head and rubs her back but she barely moves. His voice is too quiet for me to hear everything he says. I'm pretty sure Gabe is the one filming again. I don't see Monica in the shot but I hear her voice, and then Sean's. Monica, I looked in every single room, there's nothing in here. Sean, freaking the fuck out, man, I'm tired of this shit. A shot of somebody, caught very high in a tree. Whoever's filming is panting and coughing like they started crying and it sounds like it could either be Gabe or Sal. The shot is focused on whatever's stuck up there and something breaks off the tree and falls. It makes no noise when it lands and that's where the shot cuts. Clip 8. I knew the cops weren't gonna tell me, so I asked Sean's father about the 7 dead strangers. Were they people the Pines knew? He didn't know. He just told me how he found them 6 of them, in a clearing in the woods, laying in a circle surrounding a tree with their guts strung together, holding hands like in a prayer. The 7th body was perched up at the top of the tree, impaled through the head on the highest branch.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I was 10 years old when Grandma came to live with us. It was about 6 months after Granddad passed away, and I guess, looking back, she must have been lonely in that big house of theirs. Rattling around with only the grief and memories for company. So despite a few protests from Mum, my parents took her in. There were no protests from me. None at all. Grandma was loud, and fun, and I loved her. She had an almost limitless supply of boiled sweets, and she'd always slip me a couple whenever she saw me. She was always the first to stick up for me when I got in trouble, too. But it was her scary stories that were my favorite. Grandma had lots of scary stories. She told me she dabbled in the occult when she was a teenager, trying out Ouija boards with her friends. Tarot cards, fortune telling. All that stuff. Most of the stories I'd laugh off, or forget about not long after she was done telling them, but there were a couple that really did spook me a bit. I was only 10 at the time, you have to understand. And Grandma certainly knew how to bring the stories to life. She'd shut off the lights in my room so only the glow of the night sky shone through the curtains, and she'd shuffle in real close. Close enough so I could see the wrinkles on her face, and smell the boiled sweets on her breath. Close enough so her deep blue eyes could stare straight into mine. She must have given me nightmares with a few of those tales, but now, years later, there's only one that I can still remember. Only one that stuck with me. The story about the shower, and Mr. Long Fingers. Grandma told me about Mr. Long Fingers one night after I asked about her baths. Grandma used to love her baths. She'd spend ages in them, light candles and incense, and lie in the tub humming to herself until the water turned cold. It drove my mum crazy. But when I asked her why she loved them so much, she said it was the only place she could relax. It was the only place that was safe for her to relax. Grandma stared at me with those blue eyes of hers, unsmiling, and I knew it was time for one of her stories. One of the scary ones. I shivered with pleasure and pulled the covers up to my chin. "Why is it risky, Grandma?" "Well," she said after a moment. "It's only risky if you close your eyes, of course. If you close your eyes for longer than 10 seconds. A cold itch tickled back. "Who's Mr. Longfingers, Grandma?" "No one knows, exactly," Grandma whispered. "Some think it's a creature that's attracted to the heat and smell we give off in there. Others think it's a demon that finds a way into our realm through the dense steam clouds. No one can say for sure, because the only ones who have actually seen Mr. Longfingers aren't ever going to be able to tell you." I pulled in a breath. "Why not?" Grandma shuffled closer along the bed and leaned towards me, leaving my question hanging in the air. "Don't you worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry your pretty head. As long as you remember the rules, you'll be fine." "What rules?" "What, Grandma?" "Promise me you'll never open your eyes. // And when I did finally get to sleep, I had nightmares. Bad ones. I had them all week, in fact. Dreams about disembodied eyes watching me in the dark, and long fingers reaching out to touch my exposed skin. It wasn't any better when I was awake, either. Not really. 5 seconds is fine, and 10 is just about okay, too. But any longer than that. It wasn't long before Mum realized something was up. She heard me crying out in my sleep one night, and came in to comfort me. Asked me what the matter was, and it all came out. She's told him there's a monster that'll get him if he shuts his eyes in the shower. A monster. The poor kid's been having nightmares about it all week. Seriously, Simon, you'd better say something to her tomorrow morning, first thing. Or I will. Grandma came to visit me in my room the following night. That time, as she perched on the end of my bed, there were no stories. Nothing like that. Grandma just sat there and stared down at me, her blue eyes wide and sad. The light from the moon outside my window lit up her wrinkled face. I nodded my head. "I know, Grandma. You know I wouldn't let you come to any harm." "I'll tell you what," Grandma said. "You know what I told you about Mr. Longfingers, and the shower? Well, I'm going to make sure you're safe. I'll scare the bastard off, how about that? It won't come back in a hurry if it has to face me." I nodded my head, once. I woke early that morning, from a bad dream, to a heavy thumping sound. I sat bolt upright in bed. My room was quiet around me, and I couldn't hear anything from the wall that joined my parents' room either. But the house wasn't entirely silent. The noise of the shower. But the door wasn't locked. It was a heart attack that killed her. And years later, writing this as an adult, I still know better. But she doesn't know the full truth. No one would believe me if I said the reason I don't take showers, the reason I haven't had one since I was 10 years old, isn't because I'm scarred from the sight of a dead body. It's because all those years ago, when I crept back into the still hot bathroom after the paramedics had taken Grandma's body downstairs, I made sure to check the marks her fingers had carved through the steamed glass of the shower cubicle. And those marks weren't just on the inside. /////.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
My wife, a spoiled only child to wealthy parents living in rural New York. We'd been married for 8 months at the time and things could not have been going better. We had a house, great careers, and a couple of cars to really sow in the American dream. We'd been planning on getting a dog, with thoughts of children not too distant either. Though, things wouldn't go as planned. One morning my wife got a call from the police informing her that both her parents had died in a car crash. I'd never seen her so distraught in my entire life. We began moving in as soon as possible. We sold our old house and cars and graciously accepted all the belongings her parents wished us to have. There was one problem though. The house just felt dead. It was so large yet somehow cramped. All the walls seemed tighter than they should have and you could scream from one end of the house and not hear it at the other. It took some getting used to, but the old behemoth finally grew on us. At least that's what I told my wife. When I was home alone there was just something disconcerting about the place. A creak in the floor, and rustle on the windows, the chill on my neck when I walked past a reflective window, feeling as if I was being watched. I truly hated it. I swear I thought it was the house playing tricks on me like it's done many times in the past. I tried to ignore it. But then I heard something slam. I quickly got up and went downstairs. My heart froze when I could see the glow of the kitchen light that I know I had turned off. I quietly inched my way to the large doorway that entered into the kitchen. I could hear movement. An overwhelming sense of dread seeped over my body as I finally peeked around the wall. "Oh God. Don't scare me like that," she said. "And? Are you feeling well?" I asked, seeing that she seemed perfectly fine. She turned around with a knife in her hand as she laid out the chicken. She smiled and said no. She slowly pointed the knife towards my face with lusty eyes. "Tonight is about you," she said, getting the knife closer to my face. "I'm going to make you this dinner and maybe later you can help me with a few other things." She smiled again, deviously. I bit my lip and watched her continue to prepare the meal. I grabbed her butt and told her I was going to watch the rest of my movie. I went upstairs and sat down for my movie. The table looked amazing. Too amazing. "Oh my God, you outdid yourself. I've got to get a picture of this for Instagram." I shuffled through my pockets and noticed I had left my phone upstairs. I quickly went up and couldn't seem to find it anywhere. I'm sure it was just lost in the blankets. I went to the top of the steps and shouted down, "Can you call my phone?" She laughed. "No, you gotta work for this Insta picture." "Come on," I said, "my food is getting cold." There was no response. I continued looking for about 3 minutes until I finally heard it vibrating. I found it on the ground underneath one of my shirts. It was my wife finally calling me. "Finally," I said. And hung up the phone as I stood up to go downstairs. The phone rang again. My wife. Again. "Excuse me. What was that, finally, for? And why are you being rude?" she said. "You wouldn't call my phone," I said. "Oh ha, I'm not in the kitchen, good one." She laughed. No. I mean there is someone here that looks exactly like you downstairs. I thought you came home early." I gulped as my realizations paralyzed my body. "You need to lock the bedroom door right now and find whatever weapon you can. I'm calling the police," she said frantically. "It's my sister."
Alright, quick break before our next story. let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock, knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
So that was that. My father was born in 1960. He met my mother in 1990, and in 1999 they had me. But grandmother and I did share one thing, a passion for history. Even though she'd studied physics in university, and was a math whiz, history was her real joy. She imparted a love of the past to me, and when we visited, she and I would spend much time talking about Napoleon's armies, German foreign policy between Bismarck and the Great War, the Bolshevik Revolution, you get the idea. She had a seriously impressive memory. She'd read a book once and then recount every detail from it with perfect accuracy. She mentioned Alfred Hugenberg, who she called the last chancellor of capitalist Germany. I reminded her that Hugenberg had never been chancellor, he'd been sidelined by the Nazis soon after their takeover and faded into irrelevance. She nodded. Right. In 2014, grandmother went into hospice. It became clear she didn't have much time left. She was about 90, after all. No, we never did know her precise age. Not even her birthday. As I said, she did not talk about life before my grandfather. We were all sad, of course, but it was a sort of rigid, austere sadness. That was our relationship with her. She wouldn't have wanted a lot of blubbering and sappiness. That was fine, of course. She told me she didn't have much time left. I said, sure, I know. I think I was her favorite grandchild because we're both pretty frank like that. She asked me if I'd do her a favor. Of course, I said sure. Grandmother, what uniform is this? Grandmother. Why do you have a weapon, here? My old service weapon. I'm going to tell you a story I don't think you will believe. But perhaps these things in the box will make it easier for you to believe. My grandmother said she had been active in the resistance to the Nazis long before Hitler ever took power. She fled Germany and went to Soviet Russia when the fight could no longer be continued at home. Thence to Britain, when the Wehrmacht conquered the USSR. When Britain fell, she and thousands of others who could not countenance living under the Nazi boot ran further to South Africa, in hopes of carrying on the struggle from there. Days grew darker still. The Nazis seized old French Africa and used it as a springboard to assault South Africa and beyond. Victory for the Allies became a pipe dream. But for one man, a Russian scientist, my grandmother said. She did not name him. But she said that he was brilliant. Perhaps the most intelligent man to ever live. He discovered that there are other worlds, perhaps infinitely many worlds, running parallel to each other through eternity. And what's more, he discovered how to move between them. This was the plan, she'd said. Their world, my grandmother's world, was lost. They could fight no more. So they would send someone, a single person, that was all the great Russian scientist's primitive machine could handle, into another world. Our world. This world, our world, they designated World 38. Ours was a world that had defeated the Nazis and so knew what horrors a Nazi victory would bring. My grandmother would be sent with the blueprints for the good doctor's machine. Once here, she would convince our generals and statesmen of her mission, and with the help of the great scientists of World 38, improve the transporter so that it could bring through not only one person, but millions. Once this was done, the armies of our world could march into hers, and liberate it forever from Nazi tyranny. She had stepped into the machine, she said, as artillery shells rained down on Johannesburg, and the Waffen-SS battered at the gates. Her colleagues would destroy the machine as soon as she was through. They could not risk it falling into the hands of the Nazis. Only the schematics, which she would bring with her to World 38, would remain. Now she had a mission, to reconstruct the doctor's machine. To liberate her world. That was why she had come to America, she said, though, she insisted, she did love my grandfather. That was why she had sought out the wisdom of great physicists at America's vaunted universities. But it was hopeless. No one would believe her. No one would take her seriously. Not even Everett, the father of the many-world interpretation, seriously considered the plans for her fantastic machine. So in the end, she gave up. Settled in for a quiet life with my grandfather. Liberating a parallel universe from Nazi occupation is a hell of a responsibility to lay on a 15-year-old kid. But she did it. And all choked up, what could I say? Except, I'll try, grandmother. There was one more thing in the box. Another stack of papers, covered in flowery German handwriting. What are these? She sat up sharply in her hospital bed when she saw them. Immediately, she tried to play it off, and relaxed again. But I noticed the brief shock. They are my private writings, she said, attempting nonchalance. Please, burn them. And do it soon. I do not wish for them to survive me. As the weeks went by, and her body went into the ground, I became less sure if I believed her. I did not disbelieve her. But it was all insane. Perhaps she was just going mad with age. An entire subsection of the paper, I promise this is relevant, is dictatorships and euphemisms. For example, when it came to the Nazis, herding together terrified women and children, marching them into freshly dug pits, mowing them down by the hundreds, and burying their still-twitching corpses is merely a special action. For the Bolsheviks under Stalin, the invasion of Poland or the Baltic states, the execution of tens of thousands of teachers, officers, priests, writers, and farmers, the deportation of tens of thousands more into bleak Siberia, the imposition of totalitarian state machinery and the suppression of all dissent, is liberation. It was flipping through such morbid sources that my grandmother returned suddenly and sharply to my mind. I carried the little box with me, always, unbeknownst to my parents, my siblings, or anyone else. And it hit me. I was in university, now. I might not be a physicist myself, but there were plenty of brilliant mathematicians on campus. At least a few, I knew, who had published on multiverse theories. I was going to go to a certain professor of physics, who I knew to be a self-proclaimed many-worlder, and try to broach all of this insanity gently, and see where I got. But my grandmother's private writings returned again and again to my thoughts. So I took them instead to a girl I knew. A friend of a friend, really. Fluent in German, a foreign languages major. She asked me what they were and pointed out that they looked old. I told her it was a speculative fiction work, written from the point of view of a young woman sent from a world nearly conquered by the Nazis, to ours, in hopes of rescuing her own universe. So she began to read. She finished quickly. There were only about 5 pages. She looked back up at me, rather nonplussed, kind of bored. She thought it was just a story, after all. She told me it was a letter, written by a general of the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, to a subordinate, one comrade Colonel Maria Messer. My grandmother. So these weren't my grandmother's private writings at all. Rather, they were writings addressed to her. This girl told me that it seemed, in the world of the story, somehow, the Soviet Union had established control over all of the planet. There was reference to Mexican, Yoruba, German, Kurdish, Japanese, and even New England Soviet republics. There was not enough information to reveal precisely how this had come to pass, but somehow, mankind was subject to a globe-spanning Stalinist dictatorship. And at last, I realized. I'd been played for a fool. I realized there had never been any Nazi-ruled dystopia. I realized why my grandmother had wanted me to burn these papers as soon as I could, why she had not wanted me to read them. I realized why she so badly wanted this great machine built. Remember, Comrade Messer, the world you are going into is one still stuck firmly in the age of capitalist darkness. This shall be the fifth world besides our own, we free forever from the strictures of capitalist production. I cannot stress enough the importance of the machines being built to specifications. We sent you through on a prototype. But the machine whose construction you oversee in World 38 must be exponentially superior. It must be capable of bringing through from our world, at the very least, several hundred fronts worth of Red Army soldiers, some 500 million men under arms. This, our analysts estimate, will be the minimum necessary for the military defeat of World 38, the liquidation of all class enemies and counter-revolutionaries, estimated to be some 200 to 300 million total, the pacification of all hostile populations, and finally, the true and total liberation of this world and its peoples.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
But my interview is on 5, I replied. I'll only say this only one more time. Don't get off until you hit 9th. No other floor is safe. It's crazy, but something about the way he said it penetrated my skull. He was serious. And, he looked nervous, like he had to fight every instinct in his body to say that to me. As I went to hit the button for the 5th floor, some anxiety came over me. I shook it off and pressed it. The guy was probably just off his rockers. The gentleman's warning from earlier played in my head. Thank you, I responded. If I'm, early, maybe I can come back in a few minutes. Nonsense. We'll see if we can speed things up. He's been very excited to meet you. The elevator doors started closing. I held them open. I wasn't sure what to do here, but everything seemed fine enough. Granted, the receptionist did seem a bit eager, but beyond that. From my vantage point, I scanned the office space behind the front desk area. All looked normal, cubicles, folks clicking away at their computer, a kitchen area. Pretty unremarkable. Your wife's name is Meredith, right? Press. 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 Come the fuck on. After what felt like an eternity, the doors started closing. As they closed, I heard the receptionist. I'm so curious to know what your insides taste like, Michael. Fuck. Me. 9th floor. I needed to go to the 9th floor. The elevator started moving up again. A panel above the elevator doors lit up with the following number, 11. I started talking to myself to self-soothe. It's okay, someone will call the 9th floor soon. That's where I'll get off. I glanced at the weather report on the TV. At least it was going to be sunny all week. Silver linings. Now arriving at the 11th floor. Ding. The doors opened, I hung around the inside corner of the elevator beside the buttons. No need to have another nightmarish experience, right? Great, I'm sure this will be easy to explain to her. She smiled at me, as the doors closed. Ground floor please. 9th? No, I think I'll just go to the 2nd floor instead, then. Ma'am, I don't think it'd be safe to. She smiled. I saw the reflection of the old lady in the elevator's back mirror. She looked ghastly. Otherworldly. Now arriving at the 2nd floor. The doors opened. She smiled at me again, and then exited. You sure, bud? The salary is $800,000 every hour. I tried the 9th floor button again. Didn't work. I pressed 8 instead. Anything to get away from this hellhole of a floor. I heard a loud banging on the door as the elevator started taking off. Like an aggressive knock. Bang! 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 The banging continued. Just as loud. What the fuck? Now arriving at the 8th floor. The elevator continued going up. 9. The banging softened. 15. And softened. 20. 21. And disappeared. Now arriving at the 23rd floor. It was gone. Thank fucking God. A man stood not too far from the door. He looked familiar, but I couldn't exactly place him. Hey man, he spoke. Hey. It's over man. You got out, he told me. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I had to fight it. But you said the 9th floor was the only safe one, right? There's someone here who really wants to see you. I couldn't move. He wants to give you a job. He thinks you're gonna be great. Why the fuck couldn't I move? It felt like I could only move a centimeter at a time. A true snail's pace. I inched my finger closer and closer to the "close door" button. With every fiber of my being, I pushed through. I hit the button. The doors closed, and I collapsed to the floor, free from whatever weird force was stopping me from moving. Instinctively, I looked around. Babe. Fuck, I don't know why I didn't even think to call you. I'm trapped in an elevator and fucked up shit is happening and maybe I should call the cops. Fuck I. Hun. Don't go to the 9th floor. It's a trick, honey. You have to trust me. The man from before was lying to you. It's not safe. None of this has been safe. How do you even know everything that's happening? You just need to trust me, hun. So what do you want me to do then? A demon on the other side of the phone answered this time. Go to your interview. I hung up the call and in a panic, I mashed on the 9th floor button. The elevator started rising again. Even with me hanging up the call, the muffled sound of the demonic voice coming from my phone continued. Go to your interview. Go to your interview. Go to your interview. It felt like an amusement park ride with no brakes on it. Loose. Dangerous. Flinging up at an insane speed, almost as if it was falling upwards. It didn't matter. God, what the fuck? Now arriving at the 90th floor. The buttons didn't even go past 52. Now arriving at the 141st floor. Now arriving at the 230th floor. Now arriving at the 401st floor. The voice started croaking. A demonic sound this time. A sudden halt. The elevator stopped. The doors didn't open though. The panel above the elevator doors had no indication on what floor we were on. Was this where I was supposed to get off? Before I could ponder the question further, I heard a soft tapping on the elevator. A voice from outside. I decided to bite, for reasons I still don't fully understand. What do you mean? What if you stay on this floor forever, and I get to go home? I am sorry, kid, I mustered back. An awkward silence between us. He told me that he wants to wish you a happy birthday, said the kid. I think he's got it wrong. Today isn't my birthday. What? And something above me on the ceiling. Looking straight down at me. I waited for the impact. The doors opened. Another reception desk. Wait, is this really the... I felt light. For the ground floor, she said. Single use only. I took it and headed towards the elevator. Then, I turned back to face her. Fair enough. I said a silent prayer to myself as I put the button where it belonged. I pressed it, and the elevator went down. It was a smooth ride. Now arriving at the ground floor. Ding! I marched out, ready to get the fuck out of this building. The woman just smiled at me. Happy birthday, Michael. /+++++.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
My family has a curse. On every generation, a woman dies at 18, by polonium poisoning. Pat, you know how Eleanor used to say that when she was 18, a she-devil offered her some kind of paradise if she agreed to die immediately, right? It was a weird question. Whenever my mother had a little more to drink, she'd retell this tale over and over. She came from a long line of spiritual but pragmatic women, women who fought to study and to work in male-dominated fields. Women who also found a good man to marry, women who had everything. But then tragedy struck in their lives and they would lose a daughter or a niece. Always. Yes, Mom, I replied, and we recited together, and she said fuck off, I have 7 siblings to help raising. And Eleanor did. She worked her ass off to send her younger brothers and sisters to good schools, became a college teacher herself, and kept teaching every new generation of women to be strong and stand up for themselves. My mother always loved her to bits, and did her best to raise her kids the way her grandmother had taught. Eleanor peacefully died of old age when I was a baby, and overall lived a great, accomplished, loving life. Eleanor didn't believe it was a tragic coincidence. No. After Cecilia, there were no deaths. I'm the only female in my family who is still 18. Then today a gorgeous, magnificent woman approached me. Hello, Patricia. Her voice was velvety and melodious. I see Eleanor's granddaughter told you about me. I mechanically filled 2 little cups as she graciously sat. When you see Krista, tell her to see a doctor about that persistent headache. Unpleasant surprise on the way, she said very casually. So tell me about you, Pat. Don't you know all about me already? I asked. She smiled kindly, but the warmth never reached her violet eyes. It wasn't like they were cold, but they were neutral. Neutral and incredibly sharp. I know everything there is to know about everyone on your little planet, darling. But I'd still like to hear your version. She smiled so brightly I thought I was gonna go blind. I don't feel safe. 2 of my friends have been assaulted. I admit sometimes I'm scared to leave my bed, I replied. Still, I'd feel so bad about how my mother would miss me. She smiled. Are so much better than me in every sense. I know. I panic easily, I don't trust my own decisions, and I don't have any special talent. Sometimes my life feels like such a waste. It's not, dear. It's not. Because you were born for something greater. Greater than these girls you deem better than yourself. They are fit for this world. You are fit for the utopia. What's the utopia? Oh, God exists. God created great things. Imperfect, inferior beings like you humans are just the collateral damage of his masterpieces, the residuum of the creation. He never even turned his face to you, or batted an eyelash when we told him our plan. Lucifer and I see potential in you. Well, some of you. Most are truly garbage. I was utterly amazed. Why do you only take young women? That's a great question. Lucifer likes to collect men in their 40s, so he can laugh at their moral dilemmas. How will my family live without me, the great provider? What if Karen marries another man and Cody turns gay because he didn't have a masculine figure? She did a great impersonation of a generic middle-aged man. But I take my girls while they are still beautiful and not completely tired of how unfair this world is to them. I don't want the morons in your society to make you forget what Eleanor taught you. She knew there would be only nothingness out there after she died, but she opted to stay and take care of her loved ones. It was a bold, admirable choice, and I decided to reward her for it. She was the only one I ever approached to refuse. So you can't both live a great life here and go to this place you call utopia? I asked. How is that utopia? Will I like it? We were now surrounded by a stunning, futuristic place. There was no sense of feeling cold or hungry, we could move by floating around as we pleased, and there were amazing buildings everywhere, decorated with statues of pure white marble and paintings so beautiful I wanted to cry. This place is constantly expanding, so you'll always find new things to do. You'll never live another tedious day. Oh, you have a few days to deal with all your stuff. I'm not a monster, you know, the she-devil smiled again. Great. I said. There's only one thing I need to do before I go with you. I want to kill the man who raped my best friend. And then I killed him. It feels like I finally found my purpose. If this world is all that there is, the only thing we can do is enjoy it. And we'll only be able to enjoy it if we cleanse it. But there's only a problem, I already agreed with dying tomorrow.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
It was stupid and immature. I'll be the first to admit that. But it's not like I killed anyone. And if you want to try to understand things from my perspective, there was really no way that I could not do it. It was like I had to do it. I got Billy's older brother, a previous student of Mr. Hilrow, to get me the dildo. Then, before class started, I stood it up on Mr. Hilrow's desk. I taped a pair of tiny glasses to the head, wrapped a tiny necktie around the shaft, and propped up a little name tag that read, Mr. Dildow. I thought about Mr. Dildow again and almost died from the effort of not cracking up. Mr. Hilrow went on. You will stay here through the night, and reflect upon the proper manner in which to conduct yourself while enrolled in this educational institution. Then he flicked off the light switch and left the room. That threw me for a loop, but I shrugged it off, stood up, and went to get out of there. The door was locked. The fuck? Mr. Hilrow disappeared around the corner. I stood staring out of that little window for about 15 minutes before it started to dawn on me that the bastard really meant to keep me locked in that room all night. No reception. I walked over to the exterior window and held my phone up to it. Still no reception. I tried to open the window, but it was jammed shut. I looked down to the parking lot below. People were leaving for the day. I thought about breaking the window and jumping for it, but I was on the second floor and it was too far down onto the pavement. Plus, I knew I'd get in a bunch of shit for breaking school property. "Hello?" I asked into the darkness. "Mr. Hillrow?" "Look, I've learned my lesson. Really, I have. I am truly sorry for setting up that dildo on your desk." It was dead quiet, and I didn't see anybody there. That creeped me out, but I was happy to get out of the room at least. I walked down the hall, which was now lit up by a few dim lights up at the top of the wall. I knew where I was headed first, the bathroom. When I heard a scraping sound, like something sharp being dragged against the metal of the locker doors, followed by what sounded like a low growl, that's when my urge to piss was suddenly relieved, right down my leg. It's also when I started running like hell. I held the power button for a full 5 minutes straight before I gave up and put the useless thing back in my pocket. I felt like crying. It was bad enough just being locked in there. Being locked in there with a bunch of locker monsters and who knows what else was much, much worse. I decided to stick by the front entrance and wait it out. I sat there in my pissy pants for hours. I would start to get bored and even a little sleepy, and then I'd hear a noise from somewhere in the school and I'd jolt into full alertness. Sometimes it was a soft rustling sound that I wasn't quite sure I was actually hearing, and sometimes it was a loud, unmistakable bang. Once, I was sure that I heard someone laughing. I took a cautious step in and was shocked to see Miss Hadley, aka the lunch lady, standing there behind the counter in her hairnet. "Young man," she said when she saw me. "You're just in time." The lunch lady laughed. "Oh, sometimes when I can't sleep, I come down here and try out a new recipe. And tonight, oh boy. I've come up with something out of this world. I think the children will love it." She was right about that. I mean, I was ready to get the hell out of there, but at least now I knew that I could get out of there. I didn't see the harm in chowing down first, especially since it smelled so good. "Let me know what you think," she said, smiling. "Yeah, I figured. What I meant was, what kind of?" Miss Hadley, can I go now?" "You don't like your meat, young man?" asked Miss Hadley frowning. "Oh, no, it's great. It's just, my parents are probably worried sick about me. I've been stuck here all night. Mr. Hillrow locked me in." Another scream. "Oh, that'll be Lily, my assistant," said Miss Hadley. "She's forever burning herself, or if not that, it's a slip of the knife. Clumsy girl, but has a great instinct for cooking." "Miss Hadley? Can I please go?" "Very well, young man. I'll see you to the door." Just what I wanted to hear. A way out of the nightmare. When I got home, I'd hug my parents, then get in bed where it was nice and safe and there were no weird sounds, or locker monsters, or mystery meats. When we turned the corner and the entrance came into view, my heart first sank and then started beating like crazy. Standing in front of the door, with his arms crossed, was the janitor. Except, he didn't look like he looked during the day. During the day, he didn't have a bunch of spikes coming out of his head, for starters, and he also didn't have empty white holes where his eyes should be. He didn't have long claws during the day either, at least none that I had ever noticed. "Let the boy pass, Bob," said Miss Hadley. Everything started to spin, and I felt woozy. "Come on dude," I groaned. "I gotta get home. I'm sorry about the dildo, if that's what this is about. I'll never do anything like that again, I promise. I looked past the janitor monster and saw that it was starting to get light out. Even if I didn't make it out right then, it would only be a few more hours until school opened. Every day around dawn, the gas pours in through the vents and knocks me out. There's no way to stop it. I've tried. Next, I wake up in a dark room, which is actually a sort of sub-basement dug into the basement floor and covered with a hidden hatch door during the day. At night, the hatch opens, and I am free to wander the halls of the school, if I choose. I never want to, but I have needs. I need to eat, and use the bathroom. I need to shower in the locker room. I need to wash my clothes. I need to try to find a way out of this nightmare, even as it looks more and more like there is no way out. Plus, as bad as it out in the school, it's miserable in my dark little hole, too. If I stay there too long, I start to lose it. I'm at the computer lab now. I have very limited access to the internet, and it seems pretty random what sites I can and can't visit. I can't read any news, so I don't even know if anyone's out looking for me, or if my entire existence has been forgotten since I got trapped in this hell. Lately, I've come across this forum. This is, for some reason, the only subreddit that I can read. I don't even know if I can post, but it's worth a shot. You guys seem like you've dealt with a lot of weird shit, so maybe you'll take this seriously. Please help me. My name is Emmett Emerson. I am at CHS in Claremont, Maine, USA. During the day, I am in the sub-basement, if you can find it. During the night, if you can somehow get in and make it past the janitor, I am usually somewhere running away from monsters. / The second night. The janitor's closet.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service. I have some stories to tell. Part 6, by Search and Rescue Woods. Part 3. Part 4. It's been way too long since I posted an update, and I'm sorry about that. There's also been some confusion about the new formatting requirements on the board, which I've cleared up. So these next few stories are going to be posted a little differently. They'll be in chronological order, and I'll do my best to tie them into each other as much as I can so it doesn't skip around too much. Now, I don't like talking about this next case very much. It was an awful one that I've done my best to forget about, but of course that's easier said than done. This happened about 6 months after the conversation with my friend at the bar, and up until that point I hadn't had a lot of really weird shit go down. A few things here and there, and of course the stairs, but it's amazingly easy to get used to stuff like that when it's treated as if it's normal. This case was a little different. I think we can agree that there's stuff going on out here in the woods, and while I'm not going to spout off about what it could be, or offer any theories, what I want people to take away from all of this is that it is so damn important to be safe when you're out there. I know a lot of you think you're invincible, but the fact is that you can die out there, or be hurt, or go missing. It's easier than you'd ever imagine. I apologize for this relatively short update, guys. I will do my absolute best to continue this series as soon as possible. Thanks for all your continuing support, it means the world to me.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun, and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
The old lady at the hospital check-in desk with the crazy curly hair smiles at me. Lily, what a lovely name. Is it with 1 L or 2? Why does she keep asking me this? 2, of course. I watch her spell my name with 3 L's. I walk away to look at the other people in the waiting room. A blonde lady and her son are sitting by the automatic doors that go outside. The boy has a bandage over his right eye. Pachar would be able to tell me why, but Pachar isn't here. I know what's going to happen to the boy though. He's going to see a doctor who's going to take the bandage off and shine a light in his face and then make him lie down and put some drops of medicine in his eye while his mom holds him down and he screams. Then they'll put the bandage back on. Across from them is a man with a weasel face filling out some forms on a clipboard. I've never seen a weasel up close, but I know weasel is also a term used to describe someone with beady eyes and a long face, and this guy has both, so that's a weasel face. Oh, he's looking back at me. I'm just looking at this plant. Wait, I don't think that's a real plant. I thought these plants were here to provide oxygen for people, but they're just here for decoration. Lily. Mom calls, come here. My mom takes a magazine about housekeeping. That's not actually an interest of hers, but she likes to pretend it is. She's probably going to look at pictures of other people's homes and then silently judge my dad for the ways our home doesn't look like them, and he's there all the time. But he digs up all my dead pets and weeds her garden and writes dirges, so he's not just sitting on his butt all day. I wonder if he's sitting on his butt right now while we're at the hospital. I flipped through a magazine about science. Some photographer got really close to monkeys and took photos of them doing monkey stuff. Apparently you can get a job just squatting in the jungle taking pictures of animals. I want a job like that. Maybe I'll save up my money and buy a camera and start taking pictures of animals. Or I could be one of those photographers who takes pictures of crime scenes. The monkeys in this magazine story look really happy that this photographer is hanging out with them. I glance up from my monkey article and see the weasel-faced man staring at me from the far corner of the waiting room. He looks back down at his forms, then scribbles some more stuff before taking the clipboard over to the lady with the enormous glasses. I watch him because he's got suspicious written all over him. But then I see that in a while he's going to be talking to some doctor in a big white coat like all doctors have, and they're going to go off to an office and talk about grown-up stuff, so I start singing to myself in my head to stop knowing what's going to happen. Weasel guy turns around and looks at me again. I imagine him with whiskers and then realize I'm staring and remind myself to blink and go back to my monkeys. I guess it's not his fault he was born with a face like a weasel anyway. The hospital is like a maze. Halls go down other halls and there's dead ends that are offices and closets. I bet the center of the hospital is where the Minotaur lives. That's a monster from an old story we read about in school. It lived in a giant maze and people would go in the Minotaur's maze and get lost and then it would eat them. A Minotaur is like a human but with a cow for a head. Not a whole cow, just the head. That's because an MRI uses magnets. Mom told me about it before we got here. Big, powerful magnets that will rip any metal right off you. I bet if a Minotaur got an MRI it would pull the metal ring out of its nose. Why do cows get nose rings anyway? Maybe it's only the punk cows. I don't have any jewelry or piercings, so I should be fine, but I brought a bunch of quarters in case things get bad and I have to pay to the swear jar. They're a little sweaty from me holding them because I got no pockets. Mom holds them for me. I see what she did there. She didn't say I was getting him back when we got home, she said we'd discuss him when we got home. You said I could have him when this is over. Not discuss him. I am not going to throw a tantrum. I want to. I want to start shouting about how she's changing her promise, but I know if I start yelling she'll use that as a reason to not return Pachar to me. This is a test. She's trying to make me upset to justify not giving him back. I'm not going to do it. So I just stare at her and think the tantrum. Mom stares back. I imagine she's getting the images I'm sending her with my brain and it makes me smile. She smiles back. If you're afraid of tight spaces, Han, the nurse says, it's going to feel a little cramped. But you have to lay still. You're going to get an injection of contrast. Oh no, dear. Well, there goes 1/4 to the swear jar. Maybe I really do have a tumor. Finally I come out and it's all over. I'm about ready to claw this thing out of my arm, but the nurse pulls it out for me and puts a bandage over the spot. I can see the hole they poked in me. She has me sit in a wheelchair and takes me out into the hall. I can walk. I can feel him looking down at me. He's really tall and thin, but all I really notice is he's got boots with pointy toes on because I'm not going to look up at him. I'm just going to stare at this floor and maybe he'll think I'm asleep or something. Oh right, I just looked at him a moment ago. Maybe I have that disease where you just fall asleep suddenly. I could start snoring. I know what would surprise you. What if we talked about Pachar? Do you know where Pachar is? I whisper. I'm afraid of speaking in full volume, I don't know why. I almost don't want him to hear me. I just want the nurse to come back and will me back to my mom. Mom knows where Pachar is. Felix kneels down next to me and puts a hand on the arm of my wheelchair. Even his fingers look like weasels. Not like weasels, but weasel fingers. Not that weasels have fingers. I guess they do, sort of. But not like human fingers. If a weasel turned human, I think it would name itself Felix Weaselman and start terrorizing little kids at the hospital. Oh no, that must be what this is. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Felix stares at me. So what did he say? What's Raziel the angel of, Lily? No, Lily, you don't like keeping secrets, do you? He says. I'm going to be honest with you too. I'm not from around here. I used to travel all over. Do you like carnivals? Have you ever been on a tilt-a-whirl? Gone to the top of a Ferris wheel and looked down? I'm a mentalist. That's a stage performer, kind of like a magician. Do you like magic? Oh, I don't actually know that, dear. I know that your brother hid something from you, but in order to know where, I'd need to meet Roger, and unfortunately he's not here, is he? Rats. Where the hell did my nurse go? The heat in my head and arm are going away. I feel a lot more clear thinking. What happened to him? Felix nods. He looks like he just took a bite of a really nasty sandwich. I think he's trying to suck his weasel teeth into his face or something. I came here looking for information on her, Felix whispers. His voice doesn't sound so cheerful anymore. It's almost like he wants to snarl. His teeth are clenched together and he's saying everything through them. But instead I found you. You don't have to be afraid, my dear. I'm going to find Meredith. I found her once, I'll find her again. Somebody needs to protect the rest of us from her. He puts a hand on my shoulder. It's going to be okay. I'll see you soon, and then he walks off in the other direction down the hall and back into the maze where he came from. I'm shaking and I can't stop. Something about Felix Weaselman terrifies me. It wasn't his weasel face either, it was like I was finally meeting somebody who is crazy. Other kids call me Mad Lily sometimes, especially buttholes like Jeffrey Baker. But they haven't met anyone like Felix. He was so calm and seemed normal, except for the whole part about knowing my secrets. I wonder if that's even true. I wonder if there's really an angel in his locket, and if so, why didn't it speak to me? Mom and the nurse finally show up for real a few minutes later and take me back to my clothes so I can change. I do it as fast as I can so we can get out of there. Mom had put my quarters in her purse, she gives them to me. I tell her she's going to need to keep a couple. At home, Dad is in his workroom. He was probably writing a dirge. He does that. Mom tells me to sit at the dining room table and wait. I wonder what we're having for dinner. Probably something that's going to make me want to vomit. I wonder if I can convince them to order pizza if I tell them that the medicine they injected me with made me feel funny. Mom comes back with Dad and Pachar. Pachar, where were you? Do you understand? Dad asks me.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
There's a chemical fog outside our school. We can't leave, by writing with blood. The view from our classroom windows is nothing but a murky white. I bet if I went outside and looked down, I wouldn't be able to see past my knees. I won't be going outside, though. I honestly don't think I'll leave this classroom for a while. We will now be having a lockdown drill. We request everyone stay calm, and follow the instructions of their current teacher. If you're outside your classroom, we ask that you please make your way back in a timely manner. Thank you. The reintroduction of sound started with a couple in the back corner whispering and giggling to each other. Students, growing more impatient, began talking to each other. It took 10 minutes before Mr. Sampson himself moved to his desk, shooing Susan out in the process, in an attempt to get some work done. 10 more minutes passed. He grew frustrated, and motioned us back to our seats. That was when someone peeked outside. I'm not sure what they were looking for, maybe to see if this was a different sort of drill, or if maybe it wasn't a drill at all. It didn't take long for everyone else to be made aware of the oddity that was the outside world. Hey guys. I can't see outside. It's like, hella foggy. I think her name was Ashley. I worked on a lab project with her once. Shit, she's right. A guy chimed in from across the room. Jesus, that's some massive blockage. Imagine driving in that. It can't be foggy, it's not even humid out. Plus, already lunchtime. Way too late for fog. Susan snorted. You know. Like a smartass. Well, it's clearly something. Do you think it's fucking with the cell phone towers? I don't have any reception. Ashley spoke again. Despite Sampson's protests, there was a quiet murmur of agreement. People who'd either checked their phones prior and noticed the same thing, or those who were checking them now and, well, noticing the same thing. Weather does screwy things, guys. Who knows? I finally interjected my own opinion, shrugging my shoulders. A few more murmurs, slowly growing louder in volume as friends and deskmates began talking to each other to alleviate the boredom. It was around 2 o'clock we heard the first scream. It was horrible and blood-curdling, and it came from outside. We could hear it reverberate from the glass window, cold to the touch. As I'd find out later, the first of many screams to come. Some kid had decided to go outside. We didn't know that yet, though. Mr. Sampson had clearly had enough. It was cold outside as I passed the threshold. You know when you enter a Walmart at midnight, and everything is just weird? Like you're on a different plane. That's kind of what this felt like. The halls were dark. Silent. The only light strewn in through the double doors in Hall B, casting large shadows behind doorways. The fog pressed against the door, almost ominously. I'm leaving. The guy from earlier shrugged, headed towards the doorway. What if they turn the alarms on? The doors will sound. Especially if we're on a lockdown. Ashley pointed out. There's a shower in the science lab, we should get them there. 30 voices, all at once. We split up, in the end. 5 of them headed to 2B, the lab with the supposed shower. The rest of us headed into the classroom, half of us eerily quiet, the other chattering in confusion and alarm. And here we are, folks. A couple hours later, in a classroom surrounded by white. A fog of chemicals. We should find someone who knows what's going on, we can't just sit here, can we? And yet, that's exactly what we're doing. I'm posting this. You guys seem to know your way out of some, less than ideal situations. I'm at a loss. I'm scared. Update.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
I clean crime scenes and hoarder houses for a living. Today I saw something I don't understand, by Dopamine. The hardest part is the smell. Sweet and almost gooey, with undertones of vomit and fetid swamp, sweat and unwashed skin. The stench strengthens and weakens seemingly on a whim. Sometimes I swear it moves, drifting across a room or directly overhead, or lunging forward to swallow me. Now a couple days ago, I was assigned to a suicide house. The victim was a middle-aged lady with hoarding issues. She lived alone. Her much older brother lived in a nursing home. She called him like clockwork once a week. Suddenly, she stopped calling. 4 weeks passed, and he was frantic. He has dementia and other issues. His sister was his only family, the only one other than the parish priest who ever came to visit, so he felt her absence keenly. By the time his caretakers finally called in a welfare check, his sister had been dead for at least 3 weeks. The house is a neat, narrow little 2-story with a slightly overgrown yard and a tiny grove of apple trees out back. Nothing out of the ordinary. Inside was another story. It's hard to describe bad hoarder situations. Entire rooms are overwhelmed with literal mountains of trash. Clothes and stuffed animals, books and papers, cheap gas station figurines, cat litter, dead animals, old electronics. The list is endless, and somehow it all looks the same. Just a morass of garbage and forgotten belongings steadily claiming the house from its human occupant. It took 2 days to clear a path to the back of the house and 3 days to actually empty out the rooms. It took a full day to clear the stairs, which, for some reason, were literally coated with dried vegetation and what looked like a metric ton of table salt. According to real estate information, which we always dredge up before entering a home, the second level had 2 bedrooms and an office. Ignoring a sudden case of the creeps, I inspected each bedroom. While thoroughly permeated with the stench of the lady's recently removed corpse, they were utterly spotless. The paint on the walls even glistened. Now, these things were definitely bugs, but they weren't normal. For example, one was a coppery caterpillar with a flat, almost humanoid face. Pinkish skin, wrinkles, eyelids sinking down into empty sockets and everything. Another was this arachnid thing with a bluish, crab-like body and a single desiccated eye peering up from the thorax. Yet another looked underdeveloped, almost fetal. It had wrinkled sage-colored flesh and long ears that reminded me of a basset hound. At this point, I was pretty sure I'd stumbled on some eccentric lady's collection of gag gifts. The taxidermy animals made the joke theory a lot harder to believe. The first one I saw was this tiny, slow-eyed thing with beautiful features corrupted by unnatural proportions. The second was basically a giant, lacquered anemone with what must have been 1,000 rot-rimmed holes boring through the tentacles. The worst looked like a person, with a frozen, open-mouthed smile that spread to its ears and 5 glassy eyes arching over the upper lip. Because I was no longer sure if these items qualified as garbage, I carefully sorted and stacked everything. Then I got started on the walls. About 7 feet tall and maybe 3 feet wide, it dominated the room. Rendered in 100 shades of green and black and gray, it depicted a misty, primeval forest drenched in moonlight. Luminescent flowers sprouted along upraised tangles of tree roots. A tall, forbidding figure peered through the trees, half-cloaked in soft darkness. No features, but the suggestion of strength was clear in its broad shoulders and long, sinewy limbs. A curtain of hair reflected the moonlight. I couldn't discern the color, the shadows were too deep, the lines and hues of the figure too indistinct to even begin to guess. That enormous painting had come to life. The figure stood silently. Only its hair moved, rippling in the wind like a banner. I bolted. But the thing is, I want to go back. Not because I'm fearless, far, far from it, but because I want to know more. I'm not the only one, am I? I mean, how do you look at this stuff and not ask what, why, or how? How do you not want to cross the threshold into that painting and see what's there? I don't know. Part of me definitely wants to call in sick for the next month. But part of me wants to go back. Maybe even tonight. Like I said, I don't think I locked the door. I won't necessarily go upstairs or anything. I'd just be making sure the place is secure. Before I go, if I go at all, has anyone encountered something like this? Do any of those taxidermy creatures ring a bell? I know it's a shot in the dark, but if you have any ideas, I'd like to hear them.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
My friend was raised to know the exact date and time of her death, by Hyperobscura. I only knew Michelle for a month, but it was truly a month to remember. I first met her when she was carving out my high school bully's eye with a butter knife, and we were more or less inseparable after that. She was a few years older than me, so of course I fell instantly in love, but I knew deep down we were destined for friendship and little else. I knew this deep down because she made it clear that she was gonna die in roughly a month. Can't love a dead chick, she'd say. At first I thought it was just a clever way to avoid the awkwardness of turning me down, but at some point I came close to believing her. It was just something about her, something extremely free. Careless and unconfined. Refreshingly brave and outspoken and honest. You'd think she'd get into trouble after doing something like that. But it was never reported. Brett claimed it had been an accident, that he'd crashed with his moped. I think he feared that Michelle would kill him if he said otherwise. I for one have no doubt she would have. That was just who she was. How do you know you're gonna die? I asked her once. About halfway into the forest, I suddenly lost her. It was like she vanished without a trace. I walked back and forth, up and down, but there was just no sign of her at all. Eventually I had to give up and return home, my mind growing ever darker. The last day came and went, but I didn't know it was the last day. If I'd known, I would have told her how much I cared for her, how much she meant to me, how much I owed her my life and sanity. Without her I wouldn't be alive. But I didn't know, and I never told her. I hope she somehow realized it, that she could see it in my eyes and actions every day, but I can never be sure. This is it, she said, this is the day I die. She walked over to me and handed me an envelope. It was light, but there was definitely something in it. A letter perhaps. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek. If I concentrate real hard I can still conjure up the smell of her perfume.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
I'm a nurse for the elderly. One of the patients made a terrifying confession, by not applicable. Most of the time, it's pretty mild stuff. Old Gregory cheated on his wife in their 30s, Larry used to be into hardcore BDSM, Lisa stole from her company for a while. Stuff you don't necessarily expect, but that doesn't surprise you in hindsight. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. You need some context in order to make heads or tails of this. It all started with Parker, so I should too. He's a bitter old man. No way to sugarcoat it. A tough nut to crack, rage and hatred for everyone and everything simmering under the surface at all times. He's the type of person that won't be satisfied until your parade is soaked to the bone in rain. He's been here since before I was hired, so the other nurses warned me about him from day one. Our first interaction happened when I had to check up on him and make sure he took his medicine. It was a nice evening, and I found old man Parker in his room, lounging in his recliner. He faced towards the windows, back to the door, and he didn't bother to turn around and look at me when I entered. "Hey, fresh meat," he spat, a response laced with spite. That was how the first 3 weeks went by. I went over to his room for this or that, he made some snide remarks to insult me, and I held my tongue. It was clear he didn't want anyone around, especially me. But I was never a quitter, and I wasn't about to bend the knee to some old fart with a vendetta against happiness itself. "Listen here, you shriveled up ball sack," I went off on him. "I don't know what your problem is, but I don't need this kind of treatment in my life. I'm not surprised that your family left you. With an attitude like that I'd have dropped you at a care home first chance I got as well." "Jessica. Jessica," he repeated, letting each letter roll off his tongue. "Tell you what, I like you." "Going home for the night?" he asked. "Yes. Of course." I knew what this meant. Parker felt his time was coming, and he wanted someone next to him. I leaned in to take his hand into mine, but a bastard will be a bastard to the very end. He slapped my hand away. So we stood there in awkward silence, watching the night settle outside. "You're the closest thing I have to a friend, Jessica," he said out of the blue. "The closest thing I have to a family." He let out another chuckle, but it sounded sad. God, I'm so pathetic. "Do you have any plans tonight?" he asked, and I nodded a no. "Then, can I answer your question with a story?" That left his mother alone to raise him, but they weren't the only ones struggling to make ends meet in that town. Most everyone else did too. Life back then was harsh, especially for isolated communities like theirs. It wasn't that uncommon back then. Kids as young as 8 or 9 working shoulder to shoulder with the adults. We didn't have much of a choice. "I still remember getting my first ever pay," he said with a sad smile. "A small sum, but I was proud. Mother wanted me to spend it on myself, to get something nice, but I didn't. I bought a sack of flour for her to make bread out of, and I used the fabric to make myself a new pair of shorts." But time went on. Parker kept working throughout the years, living life one day at a time. Trouble was never far off, but he faced it head on. The adults always tried to shortchange him for his work, and other kids tried to bully him out of his meager earnings regularly. "The first time that happened, I came home empty-handed with a broken nose and a busted lip," he said bitterly. 5 of them ganged up on me. It was a dog-eat-dog world back then. That man was an alcoholic abuser. Parker and his mother found out as much soon enough. Her sooner than him, but he saw the signs. Even though he still worked and brought his earnings home, food was suddenly in short supply. His mother always had bruises she tried to hide, and his stepfather was always drunk. When I returned home beaten up again by the older kids, I was hopeful for once. I thought he'd go out there and do something about it. And he didn't. I asked with hesitation. "He beat me up as well for being a sissy," in his own words. "It better not happen again, you hear me?" He said that the next time I come home empty-handed, he'd show me real hell. Why didn't you run away? Or get the authorities involved? It wasn't long until he raised his hand at me on the regular, Parker said. But it kept my mother safe, so I endured it. On the nights I'd get beaten up, she was safe. Old well? I asked, not sure what it had to do with anything up to that point. Old well, Parker confirmed. You know, a hole in the ground for people to get drinking water. Parker led his stepfather out of the town and into the woods. Farther away from civilization, deeper and deeper between trees, until he heard the faint echo of the well still calling out. The authorities pretended to search for him for a few days, but no one truly gave a shit. He was just an alcoholic bastard, so everyone thought he'd gotten his comeuppance. That he died in a ditch somewhere, or he ran away in search of greener pastures and other people to terrorize. No one suspected us, Parker said. Not my mother, who was too weak to fight back, and they considered me just a kid. No way in their eyes for either one of us to kill an adult man. Didn't it scare you? The gang was 5 members strong, their leader 19 years old and the youngest about Parker's age. The rest were all in between. Starving street urchins, Parker called them, either orphans or with home lives similar to his own that pushed them to run away and brave the world. The community wasn't happy with them, but they never targeted adults, so they were tolerated. Until they beat up Parker for the 100th time and he decided he'd had enough. Parker tried to challenge him to a one-on-one fight outside of town, but he came with the rest of his gang and he was pissed. You could see the bloodlust in his eyes from a mile away. I knew they'd give me hell like never before, so I had no choice. All 5 of them had to go. Parker ran away, and just like his stepfather, they chased him into the woods. He hid near the well again, and when they got closer to inspect the echoing voices, Parker repeated his earlier stunt. I pushed the oldest boy first, he said in a stone-cold voice. Then, before the others had a chance to wise up, I pushed the second oldest as well. The others were smaller, I could take them. They tried to run away, to escape with their lives, but I couldn't let them. Parker chased them down, and he caught up to the youngest first. He tripped the boy from behind and stomped on his knee to break it, then kept going. The second one he grabbed by the shoulders and swung into a tree head first, breaking his neck. I tackled the last one and got him into a chokehold. He kicked his legs, clawed at my arm, tried to bite me a few times. When he realized he couldn't break free, he started pleading, begging for his life. Told me he wouldn't speak a single word about what happened there. He begged like that all the way to the well, until his legs were over the edge. The boy with the broken neck followed, and the one with the broken leg dragged himself quite the distance by the time Parker got to him. But he went through with it, and that night the well gained 5 more voices. Parker stopped his retelling for a moment and stared off into the distance. At first I thought he was either giving me a breather, a bit of time to process what I heard, or that he was searching for words. I looked outside as well, and the silhouette of a tree against the starry night sky shook in the distance. I was frozen by his side as he picked the story back up. In shock, in fear, not knowing what was about to go down or what I should do. I'd witnessed a few confessions by that point, but none came even close to Parker's. He confessed to 6 murders in just as many minutes, and I was sure there'd be a few more by the time he'd be done with me. No one missed those kids, and no one in the community blamed Parker. He wasn't the only one getting bullied by them, and on some level everyone was glad they were gone. One less problem in their lives, so they were happy to pretend the 5 ran off somewhere to carry out bigger heists. I was depressed for years because of it, but I kept telling myself that I had to do it. That my life was better now. Lies I only half believed, but they got me out of bed in the morning. Anyway, the years flew by. People kept leaving the small town, flocking to big cities in search of work. I was one of them. I found this wonderful girl and I left with her. My mother went missing one evening, and we never found her. The big city police took it a bit more seriously, but they couldn't dig up a single lead. No witnesses, no suspects, nothing. They got married with little fanfare, few friends and even fewer family members for a proper wedding, and their child was born a couple of months later. I treasured every moment with my wife and daughter, but you know how these things go. She grew up in a heartbeat. Before I realized it, she spoke her first words, took her first steps, moments I couldn't be prouder of as a father. The thing bellowed, a guttural sound that rattled my bones. Dying animal was my first thought, a coyote getting murdered or a fox going into heat. It took a step forward, into the faint circle of light surrounding the care home, and I saw a human face. Then another one, contorted in agony and held together to form a gigantic head. Another step brought its neck and torso into view. Pulsing muscles crisscrossing each other at random, skin stretched until it pulled taut, dozens of human arms jutting out of it in random places. Its myriad of eyes moved every which way, scanning, searching. For a moment, I wished my eyes could do the same thing the creatures did. I wanted to turn and look at Parker, to see his face, but I didn't dare take my eyes off of it. Every last muscle in my body was clenched, holding me in place. I was barely able to breathe. It took another step forward, and all of those dead, beady eyes focused. Every last one of them pinned on the window, on the room, on me and Parker. I kidnapped someone, Parker said, his voice fraying into a cry at the edges. An older man living all by himself. I knew him, knew he'd been a widower for decades, and he knew me. He barely fought back as I tied and gagged him. I expected him to plead as well, like the kids had. I expected him to fight me. But the silence, it was worse somehow. Did he know about that thing? I managed to push out a question. What? No, of course not, Parker answered. He was just old and frail, and he knew he couldn't do anything to stop me. Maybe he'd given up on life long ago, like I ended up doing. I don't know. The rest of the monster came into view as it advanced towards the open window, and there was so much more to it than I expected. So many legs moving haphazardly, slapping the lawn at awkward angles to pull the body along. It felt surreal, like that window was a screen and I was merely watching some cheap horror movie with even cheaper special effects. At night, I dragged the old man out of town and through the woods. I got him to the well, said a short prayer for his soul, and tipped him over the edge. He went down without a sound. I returned to my wife and daughter after that, he said, taking a step towards the window, and all was fine for a while. Seeing her smile growing up, having her by my side, it kept the guilt at bay. She was my world, and I was ready to do anything to keep my world from crumbling. The smile on the face at the forefront only grew wider, but the rest didn't match. They started whispering aggressively, their voices merging as they got louder. I kept at it until my daughter grew up. Until she found a boy she wanted to marry and moved out. Until everyone left that town behind, to be an empty shell for the forest to retake. And I called it a job well done. I thought my daughter was safe and I could finally let the monster take me. That I'd finally atone for all of my sins. And what happened to her? I asked. "'Cause I'm a selfish old bastard," he said matter-of-factly. "I wanted at least one person to know and maybe miss me. And now you do." The rest of the night was a blur. I wandered to the break room with tears streaming down my face, but I didn't even realize I was crying until I tried to light a cigarette and a tear fell on it. My hands shook like an earthquake, as did the rest of me. I smoked about half the pack, waiting and praying for that thing to leave so I could too. A couple of hours later, I finally built up the courage to bolt it out of the care home and to my car. I drove home in a haze, eyes darting at every little movement, and I didn't manage to sleep a wink until the break of dawn. So yeah, I lied until they left me alone. I lied until they packed in their car and drove off. Everyone else is awfully happy that Parker is finally gone, and I stand out among them like a sore thumb. Sitting in his recliner, writing this as sunset approaches, I realized he was right on both accounts. He was a selfish old bastard, and he left behind someone who misses him. /X/.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I hated embroidering. Sybil, we've been over this. It's a Wayne family tradition. Every woman in our family has learned this skill since as long as I can remember. Now, it's your and Olivia's turn. I scowled down at my crooked letters and uneven stitches. Why doesn't Jacob have to do it? I perked up at that and returned to my handiwork, stabbing the fabric with a little more force than necessary. Just 5 minutes later, I'd finished D&E with sloppy, crooked stitches. It bothered me, of course. It's hard for any child to know that they are favored so much less than their sibling. But I wasn't willing to give up my happiness to be the perfect daughter my mother wanted. So, I abandoned my embroidery and ran out the front door to search for my older brother, Jacob, and see if he wouldn't play catch with me. Olivia never even looked up from her work, as though nothing but that thin line of thread was of any interest to her. Olivia, of course, mastered the art. Back stitch, blanket stitch, French knot, lazy daisy, woven wheel, and more. Nothing was beyond her grasp. Embroidery became her world. She never showed much interest in the other things mother offered to teach her, but it didn't matter. She'd learned the one thing that mattered. She successfully carried on the Wayne family tradition. I remember the look on her face, as mother dismissed her time and time again. I watched Olivia watching mother fawn over the baby. The cold shock in her eyes, the tightness around her mouth. I could almost hear her thoughts screaming, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough anymore. As mother grew even more distant, Olivia threw herself into her embroidery. Like she could gain mother's favor by crafting the perfect piece. Her room was overflowing with projects, pillows and blankets and dresses. Her art grew more elaborate and involved. She went from an expert to a veritable genius. Even I could look past my jealousy and resentment and see that she was truly gifted. Mother never even noticed. One day, I came to Olivia's room to tell her supper was ready, only to see her carefully organized projects in complete disarray. She'd begun embroidering over her own designs, her bedspread, the cloth bodies of her ragdolls. If she could stick a needle in it, she was embroidering it. "What are you doing?" I asked. By the time Margaret was 1 year old, Olivia had only gotten worse. She was sitting out on the porch one morning, her stare listless and vacant. She didn't notice me approaching. If she had, she might have thought to cover the marks. I needed to practice, she insisted, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Father came home that afternoon, escorted by the police. They questioned him and then all of our neighbors. They checked the yard for footprints. They put together a search party to comb the woods behind the house. I sat on my bed, awake, for hours. I was certain the police would come to the house soon. They would tell us they'd found Margaret and that everything was okay. They had to. I warred with myself for a few moments, trying to decide whether or not I should leave my bedroom to face what the day might bring. I decided that I couldn't stomach the thought of sitting in my room a moment longer. I crept out into the hallway, afraid of breaking the stillness of the morning. Her face was covered in blood, and so was her nightgown. In fact, it looked like her entire bed was drenched with it. Sitting beside her was her embroidery kit, complete with needle, thread, and scissors. She was holding something in her arms. "Come and see," she said, completely oblivious to my rising panic as I tried to make sense of what was in front of me. "That can't be what I think it is," I thought. She shook her head and giggled a little, as though I'd said something amusing. "It's a gift. For Mother. Do you think she'll like it?" she asked, peering up at me through her dark lashes. Olivia had taken Margaret out of her crib early in the morning the day before. She'd brought her to her room, laid her on the bed, and smothered her with a pillow. Her final masterpiece. I wish I'd had the presence of mind to wake my father, to tell him what Olivia had done. To spare Jacob and Mother from seeing it with their own eyes. But I didn't. And they suffered the worst shock of their lives. My mother died of a broken heart. Father couldn't bear the sight of us children after losing Margaret, Olivia, and Mother. He sent Jacob and me away to live with our grandparents, people we'd hardly ever spoken to and who treated us as strangers intruding in their home. I'm not sure when my father died, 3, maybe 4 years after the murder. Nobody would tell Jacob and me what happened. Knowing my father, I suppose he drank himself to death. Jacob joined the military as soon as he was old enough. He promised me he would come back, that we would stick together as the only two left of our tragic little family. We chose never to have children. It was the only way I could live the rest of my days in peace. I could find these answers, if I wanted to. Because, you see, ever since my grandparents died and the burden of maintaining contact with Olivia's doctors fell onto me, I've been receiving letters. Once a year, always dated on the anniversary of Margaret's murder, Olivia's letters arrive at my door. I've never read a single one. This is the first year that I haven't received a letter. That was how I knew she was dead, even before the doctors called to notify me.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
My girlfriend started the KonMari method of tidying up a few weeks ago. What are you doing? Overnight she'd gotten rid of over 90% of the kitchen's contents. The only things that remained were 4 dishes, 1 set of silverware, and the 1 pot I'd told her to keep. "How do you expect us to eat?" I asked, furious. "You only kept 1 set of silverware. 1. How are we going to eat at the same time?" "Then, I will." She closed her eyes and leaned her head back in the recliner. "We didn't need it, Robert. You'll find you're happier without it." She nodded. ////. But we didn't talk about it. She worked late on a project she was behind on, probably because of all the tidying, and we ended up going to sleep without talking. I was about to turn around, but then I heard a whisper. A light touch on my back. The mattress shifted, and I felt something tickle my face. It was her hair. She was hanging above me. Knees on either side of my torso, leaning right over my face. Her long, straight blonde hair draped over my cheeks. I didn't dare open my eyes, but I could imagine her face hovering above mine. Dark eyes boring into my soul. No. The bed creaked and shifted. My eyes flashed open for a second, and I saw her rolling off of me. She pulled the covers over herself, snuggled against her pillow, and went back to sleep. I do not spark joy.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
My name is Lily Madwhip and I don't need a therapist, by Lillian Madwhip. My name is Lily Madwhip and I don't need a therapist. Do you think Roger is with God, Lily? Ever since Roger died I have to sit in this room twice a week with shelves full of books about child psychology and drawings by other kids on the walls and talk to Ms. Christie. I guess Mom and Dad thought I wasn't handling Roger's death appropriately. Well, Mom didn't anyway. Dad doesn't really talk to either of us much anymore. Mom is out in the waiting area with Pachar. I'm not allowed to bring Pachar in with me when I talk to Ms. Christie. Other kids get to bring things in. There's this girl with black hair who always shows up with a teddy bear that chuckles when she squeezes it. One kid even brings a toy fire engine with flashing lights. Flashing lights can cause seizures. Pachar says Roger is in purgatory, which I guess means laying in your dead body until they decide what to do with you. Ms. Christie jots this down. I go stand by the window overlooking the parking lot. It's cold and wet outside today. There's a slick spot on the sidewalk into the building where Ms. Christie works that I can see from her office. A lady and her son are walking in from their car. The boy is probably a couple years younger than me, and wearing a pair of brown, corduroy pants. He's going to slip on the slick spot, get those pants wet, and end up crying, but there's nothing I can do about it, so I look away. I hear the commotion from outside a moment later. Mom said if it rained every time there was a funeral, it would never stop raining. That sounds like there are a lot of funerals going on. Roger hid my foil Charizard before he died and now I don't know where it is. Uncle George gave it to me for my birthday when I turned 5 because he was getting rid of my cousin Susie's old collection and he said if I hung onto it I could probably use it to pay for college someday. Susie was a year younger than Roger. She died in a boating accident one summer during a family reunion. When people hear boating accident, they think you were in a boat and there was an accident, like maybe you hit another boat or ended up out of the water, but Susie was in the water and the boat ran her over, so I think it was more of a swimming accident that happened to involve a boat. I was there when it happened, but that's a whole other story. Ever since, I don't like going in the water. Not as long as there's still boats. And sharks. And piranhas. I don't want them cutting open my brain, so I don't tell Ms. Christie I know her hair color is fake. I already cried. I say instead. I did cry, but only because people expected it of me, especially at a funeral. I just want to get back to school and see my friends. I don't have any friends at school. I used to have a friend named Rachel, but I warned her that her dog Ruffy was going to have seizures and die and she stopped being my friend. Other kids think I'm weird. Jeffrey Baker calls me Mad Lily. That's okay because Pachar says puberty isn't going to be kind to Jeffrey. If I really wanted to be mean, I could tell everybody that he still wets the bed sometimes, but Pachar tells me not to be mean. Being mean lands you in purgatory. I ask Pachar what DNR stands for. Then I have to ask him what resuscitate means. Sounds like I'm not going to be seeing Miss Christie anymore. I want to warn her, but I don't know what to warn her about. Is it a bad fall? Does she have a heart attack? She looks healthy enough. I wish I got a fuller picture when I see things before they happen. But then, does it even matter? Nobody ever listens to me. Mom wants me to stop making things up to explain the bad stuff that seems to always happen around me. Dad already thinks I'm cursed and causing these things to happen. They sleep in separate beds now and Dad spends a lot of time out in the garage drinking and banging on Roger's drum set.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
I found out how my wife copes with the death of our son, by genuinely grim. There was nothing special about that particular night. Nothing at all. The TV was blaring in the living room and the dishes clattered in the kitchen with the promise of dinner. It's funny to think how much coping mechanisms can vary from person to person. Some turn to alcohol, drowning themselves in liquor every night until the consequences of their drunken behavior finally catch up to them. Others take to violence, gritting their teeth through every social interaction until the buildup is finally enough to punch a hole through the wall. Then, there's the type that confines themselves to their room and refuses to come out under any circumstances. The latter was our daughter, Maisie, by the way. She was only 14, and yet it somehow felt like she hadn't been a part of our family for a while. When she wasn't at school, she spent all of her time locked away in her room, on the computer, or with her head under the covers. We'd long since given up trying to coax her out and resorted to bringing her dinner plate upstairs and leaving it by her door. I nursed my drink thoughtfully, watching Jeremy swing and miss at a giant orc. "Set an extra place tonight," my wife Lily said, coming into the dining room, her cheeks flushed. That being said, I'm not entirely sure there's anything left. Ever since the day our son died, she's been detached from reality. I suppose in a way, we all were, but my wife was different. She couldn't, or wouldn't come to terms with the fact that Kendall was gone. She insisted we set a place for our son every time we sat down to eat. Instead of talking to the rest of the family, she'd have conversations with the urn over dinner. It's a wonder she didn't try to feed it as well. For a moment, the room was enveloped in stunned silence. Then, Lily spoke. "Dinner is almost ready," Lily blurted out, turning on her heel and heading towards the kitchen. "I'll just get Kendall." I got up to pour myself another drink. Of course, she would get Kendall. Of course, things couldn't just go back to normal instantly. It would take time. Even so, as she brought out the urn and sat it on top of the plate, followed by a light kiss on the lid, I knew I could never get used to this. "Shall I call Maisie?" I asked, as my wife reappeared with a serving dish, "or will you?" "No," she retorted eventually, "she'll join us when she's ready." And that was that. Neither Jeremy nor I questioned it any further, instead tucking into the dinner Lily had prepared for us. We didn't say a word throughout. My wife, on the other hand, said plenty. I stared at my plate, my stomach in knots. I needed another drink. Badly. But the bottle was in the living room. I wondered if I could slip away quietly to fetch it, when Jeremy piped up. "When's Maisie coming down?" he asked, arranging his peas in a straight line. "We're almost done with dinner." She began, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, Maisie. Yeah, perhaps another day." "Mom." Jeremy sat upright in his chair and waved a hand in front of her face. "Where the fuck's Maisie? Why can't you just talk to us every once in a while, huh?" he exploded. "If you spent half the time with us that you spend with that stupid thing, then maybe we would still be a family." Caught in a fit of rage, Jeremy grasped his end of the tablecloth and pulled it towards him, sending the dishes crashing to the floor. Kendall's urn, sitting atop one of the plates, succumbed to the same fate. I craned my neck to look over the damage. Amidst the porcelain shards and utensils, the urn lay cracked in half, its lid nowhere to be found. It was empty. Kendall. Lily landed knees first on the shards, the porcelain crunching under her weight. Nothing could have prepared me for what she did next. Jeremy and I watched in horror as my frantic wife snatched one half of the urn and stuck her tongue out to lick it, her fingers desperately searching for any remains left on the floor. She swept her hands across the ground, cutting her skin up in the process, and shoved the whole lot into her mouth, her eyes rolling back inside her head. I wanted to vomit. No, I wanted to run. My heart was pounding at 10 times its normal rate, threatening to leap out of my throat. My skin was clammy and my vision blurred, but not enough to stop me from seeing the monster that was my wife, stuffing ashes, blood, and porcelain shards down her throat. Jeremy must have felt the same way, but I couldn't see him, my tunnel vision only allowing the image of Lily and her feast. "Mom!" I heard him cry, his voice a mixture of terror and disgust. He didn't say anything else either, making do with only a gargled gasp and short, rapid pants. There was nothing to say. Even now that I look back on it, I cannot think of a single coherent sentence that would have befitted the circumstances. I knew instantly that my wife was gone and I'd never be able to see her the same way. But as we barged in through the door of her bedroom, I instantly knew my plan wasn't going to work out.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
I hate my job. That's why I started listening to self-help tapes in the car. Motivational speakers would tell me about how I had the power to change my life, and for a few minutes at a time, I'd believe them. That obstacles no matter how great were only in my mind, and that anyone could be happy if they just willed it hard enough. And if I wasn't happy yet, then I just had to buy another book and keep trying. My favorite speaker was a guy named John Fallow who claims he used to be a day laborer making less than minimum wage. When there weren't any jobs available, his fellow workers would play cards or chat, but he kept going door to door, knocking on businesses until he found one that needed work done. But it was never about the money, says the guy selling $30 audiobooks. He gave it all up so he could give motivational speeches and help others achieve their dreams. And sure, it was a lot of hard work and took many, many years, but he was the man. He wanted to be doing the things he loved to do, and that's all that mattered in the world. Are you too fat? Well, diet and exercise is a lot of work, but you could put a gun in your mouth and never eat again. Or maybe you're feeling down because your relationship didn't work the way you wanted. No problemo. Just slip on that noose and suddenly your ex will be the one who hates herself, not you. John's warm, bubbling voice didn't miss a beat as he proceeded to list a number of foolproof ways to die, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. I bought a ticket and printed out the confirmation code. I don't know why I did it, but for the first time in a long time I really felt like I had something to look forward to. John was a man's man, rugged and handsome as they come. He wore a cowboy hat pulled low over one eye, faded Levi's, and a button-up shirt the day of the event. He greeted everyone at the front door with a firm handshake and a beaming smile, laughing and carrying on with people he'd just met like they were his oldest friends. I expected there to be at least a little outrage, but everyone who showed up seemed legitimately happy to be there. The feeling was contagious, and by the time I sat down with the rest of the audience, I already knew several people by name. How about the speech about it being your fault if you aren't happy because you ain't trying hard enough? No. So you telling me all you fine folks showed up just to hear how to fix all your problems at once in less than 5 minutes? That what you want to hear? The enthusiasm was deafening. I got just the thing for you though, John said. A little medicine for what ails you. He produced a pill from a small leather bag in his pocket and offered it to her. She snatched it gratefully and clutched it in both hands. I felt sick. An anxious feeling flooded my body, but the cheering confused me and made me think that it was all right. If we were doing something wrong, then surely someone would have said something by now. Unable to shake the uncertainty, I left my chair and headed for the bathroom to clear my head. One of the staff noticed me, his face screwing up with suspicion. I snatched a nearby trash bag and made to enter the door they just exited from. Not just a body. A human being. A father or a mother, a son or a daughter. That thought should have horrified me, but it didn't. They didn't ask to be alive. They didn't make the world the way it was. So why shouldn't they leave when they're ready? Looks like we've got a bleeder here, John's voice carried. That's it, boy. Let it all out. You're the lucky one, the rest of us have to clean up that mess. I must have been directly behind the stage at that point. The place was dark and cluttered with electrical and sound equipment. I saw no sign of the woman's body. The thought of stumbling across her splayed out on the ground nauseated me. I shouldn't be here. It don't matter what other people expect from you, he said. The government wants you to make a lot of money to pay taxes. A holy man might tell you not to make any because it corrupts you. The people who sell burgers want you to be fat, and the people who sell diet pills want you to hate yourself for it. They all want something different from you, but you don't belong to them. You belong to you. The boy had stopped moving. I couldn't make out the faintest sign that he still drew breath. So what if you flunked out of school? Does that make the stars any less bright, or the taste of strawberries more sour? Will you no longer feel your lover's caress or the ocean lapping your bare feet? Fear, pain, doubt, they're just passing clouds, and floating in front of the sun don't mean the sun ain't still there. So I'm going to give you another chance, John continued. You get back up and go outside and tell me what you see. And if it's nothing but clouds, then pick one and call it beautiful and love it forever, because it's all part of the same sky. With that, John Fallow pulled out a syringe and stuck it in the boy's chest. He began to buckle and squirm, but John held him down while wiping the blood from his neck with a handkerchief. It came off like makeup, leaving clean fresh skin below. You too, John said, looking to where I hid. Or it won't just be blood capsules and a temporary paralytic for you. I ran for it.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.